mahalo for coming tonight. We are so thankful to have Eddy come back. He was here for the Olowalu public speaking event that they had here last month. And we thought it would be really great to invite him back and a cohort of friends of his who are doing work in a very important space, both in housing, regenerative agriculture. So thank you for coming tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Eddy, who will be moderating tonight. Eddy?
Aloha, everyone. Welcome. So grateful that Akakū has made their place available, that we can get this out to our community. I'm Eddy Garcia with Regenerative Education Centers and Living Earth Systems, and I'm just going to pass the mic to all these wonderful people and let them introduce themselves. How's that work?
Hi, I am Sam Garcia, Eddy's lovely wife, and also co-founder of Regenerative Education Centers, co-founder of Living Earth Systems, and author of Regenerative Business.
Aloha kaua. My name is Kauka Haeli'i. I am a homesteader of Waihu Ko 2, and that's out in the Waihu area, Waihe'e. Aloha, nice to be here.
Aloha mai kākou. I am Keikoa Enomoto, and I am also a homesteader in Kula at Waiahuli, and I am a director of two nonprofits, Pa'upena Community Development Corporation, which serves homesteaders, and Nā Kia'i'o Maui, which is a very recently incorporated disaster relief organization.
Aloha, I'm Dwayne Sparkman, Chief Engineer of the Royal Lahaina Resort. I'm also the founder of Tree Recovery Hawaii, as well as the Maui County Arborist Committee Chairman. So that's who I am.
So I figured it would be a great idea to have everyone here, some different walks of life. We're all on the front lines in Lahaina or with what's happening also on our island when it comes to regenerative agriculture and with homesteading. We want to try to bring into light some of the benefits of what comes with taking our sustainability back within our own hands and being able to live close to the land and sort of a simple lifestyle. We should be able to produce our own electricity, our own food. We should be conscious of our water resources and our land so that we can steward our land and have I think I'm just going to start this off with a film that we brought in. This is an older film that we made, and it's about carbon sequestration. And we hear that word, and we don't always know what that means. And there's just kind of a real simple explanation of what that means. We're going to play this short film, and then we're just going to chat about it for a second. And we're going to go back and forth with a few other films that we brought in here for you, and just sort of put it on the table so we can all just have a conversation with each other and see how that moves forward. Hi guys, I'm Eddy with Living Earth Systems, and we're sitting in a living system. In this day and age, we can use technology to repair the damage done. We can sequester carbon. We can do this together, and I'm going to show you how. I'm going to show you what this means and some really simple ways that we can get this done together. We believe that a lot of people are unclear about what actually causes climate change. It's easy to point out the doom, the gloom, and all the pollution. But what about the solution? The answers are all around us in nature. Climate change is about too much carbon in our atmosphere. But carbon is part of the cycle of nature. It is one of the building blocks of life. Our bodies are 18.5% carbon. A certain percentage of our atmosphere is carbon. So it's all about balance. How can we find a healthy balance? Starting about 500 million years ago, when plants appeared on the planet, carbon began to cycle. This allowed for life to evolve as we know it, life that thrives in an oxygen-rich environment. Humans figured out how to pull carbon from deep within the earth, where the natural cycles have contained it for millions of years. The fossil deposits, oil. Then we burned it for energy, releasing it into the sky, interrupting the cycles that nature designed to keep it in balance. The way we have managed commercial agriculture, we have been moving even more carbon from the soil and the biosphere into the atmosphere. Specifically, we have moved 880 gigatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is heating up our planet and destabilizing our climate. Now the oceans have absorbed a lot of this excess carbon, which is resulting in an ocean acidification and is accelerating mass extinction of sea life. So in order to save life as we know it, of course, we have to stop releasing fossil carbon. The big question is, where do we put the excess carbon to get this cycle back into balance? The answer is literally in the soil. Plants with sunlight and water perform photosynthesis. They pull carbon from the air and turn it into carbohydrates, sugars. And they pump some of these sugars down through the roots to feed microorganisms who use that carbon to build soil. There we have it. Carbon moved. Plants pump it in. The soil stores it in the form of roots, organic materials such as humus brought down by earthworms deep underground, eventually turning back into oil. In some cases. Nature's living systems are amazing. Scientists have recently discovered that applying a thin layer of compost sets up an ongoing positive feedback loop that brings more and more carbon into the soil each year. Along with other regenerative practices like not tilling the soil, planting trees, cover crops, planned grazing, nurturing mycorrhizal cultures and earthworms, we can build and retain gigatons of soil carbon. This is carbon farming. This is regenerative agriculture.
We've made such incredible breakthroughs with science, but unfortunately most of the science has destroyed our planet rather than nurtured it. How do we turn that scale? How do we make it so that what we're doing nurtures our planet instead of destroys it? We have to make those choices together. It's not your choice, his choice, it's all of our choices. So how do we get on the same page? How do we start to understand that this is possible and we can make a difference?
There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time is ripe.
I still have a dream.
Unlike carbon in the atmosphere, more carbon in the ground is good for us. This makes healthy, living soil, nutrient-rich, full of life, and able to retain water. This means more nutritious food and crops that are more resilient. That's good news for farmers, families, and the planet. Remember that all of our actions have the potential to either put carbon into the atmosphere or pull it back into the ground where it has been for millions of years. The regeneration of our soil, our ecosystems, and all life on this planet is our responsibility. It is the number one task of our generation. Our health, the health of our soils, and the health of our planet are all one and the same. All things on this planet are designed to work in a circle. The circle is a cycle. Our actions are our part. I'm a carbon farmer.
These guys are part of a living earth system right here. We feed these guys. We use the water from here to fertilize the plants around here. And this is actually farming carbon.
We're sequestering carbon.
I'm sequestering carbon.
We are carbon farmers.
We're carbon farmers.
I'm a carbon farmer.
I am sequestering carbon.
Malamara aina. Take care of the land.
I'm Eddy Garcia with Living Earth Systems. What can you do to sequester carbon?
looking back at this, all the folks that you see in this are films that I've built are farms that I've built through the years here, with different folks that I've tried to mentor along. To what we really want to try to bring back is the small family farmer, so that grandma can be proud of her guava pie or apple pie or whatever it is. And that's been so sort of lost to us in just with modern times right now. So to be able to get that concept across to people that just doing what comes to us naturally, which is to take care of the land, also is sort of the answer when it comes to, we're talking about sequestering carbon, and we're talking about global warming, not global warming here. So my t-shirt is global warming. So does anybody have any questions on what they saw there? Anything that doesn't sit into their, or like any concept that doesn't sit with them in that, or does everyone understand that pretty clearly here? Oh, so composting is sort of the natural cycle that we want to happen. We want it to sort of work in a circle. And I think one of the things that we push forward a lot is what I consider sort of cold composting, sort of how a forest does it naturally. When we see a lot of the composting that we see around, we see them taking green waste, putting it into one massive area, and it gets really hot. This is known as thermophilic composting because of the heat that's involved in this chemical. It's not chemicals, but it's the chemical reaction. Nitrogen and carbon together will create this super hot material. And it does a lot of off-gassing. It actually creates a lot of methane. And I'm not saying that composting is bad, but what we should be looking at is how does a forest compost? A forest composts in a much more circular fashion. It drops trees. Birds hang out on a tree while it's fruiting. The excess fruit falls. A flood comes, puts it in a pile. There is a certain amount of thermophilic composting that will take place in the forest, but it's sort of a combination of what I call a cold composting, meaning that it's broken down by earthworms. It's broken down by copepods and amphipods and all these other little creatures. So in a sense, this type of composting seems to have like a much, I don't know, more sustainable like approach when it comes to it. But
It also adds fertility.
yeah, and it adds a lot more fertility to the soil as well. That's going to be longer term. When it comes to thermophilic composting, that material tends to leach out of the soil when it rains, where material that is eaten by living creatures and cycled down tends to have other chemicals and stuff in with it, creatine and globulin and all these other things that hold it together. That means it will stay in the land a lot longer, and it will be available to plants that way rather than leaching out. It also has the natural capacity to balance the pH in the soil. And so composting is a very good thing, whether it's thermophilic or whether it's cold composting. What we're trying to push in some of the models that we throw forward with regenerative agriculture is more cold composting, if you will, and setting up systems that will take care of themselves. So we brought everybody here today to talk about homesteading, about regenerative farming, and about all these things that sort of sit together with why do we need to start farming more on a small scale. And I don't mean just rows of monocrops that there's no diversity in there. We're talking about a form of agriculture that benefits all. It benefits the good insects, the bad insects, the birds, all the other creatures involved, and they all play a part in it. I've had a tree that was not a great fruit, and a bunch of birds would sit on it and eat all the fruit. And they didn't like the good fruit next to it, but the good fruit next to it prospered because they were pooping all over that tree, basically. So like the journey of observation is one of the really key things that we try to put forward. Is regenerative agriculture really is about paying attention, slowing down to really watch what's happening around you so that you can see the results of what's happening and not expecting this sort of instant gratification. And so putting that forward to the relevance of the film and carbon, what we should be doing right now is we should be growing trees. We should be reforesting areas that have been devastated by deforestation. We should be trying to fix areas that have been tilled. And if we think of, he has a great example of it on his shirt there, Dwayne does. If you look on that, as above, so below. The canopy from a tree should also have a root canopy the same size or even bigger, and soil web underneath the ground and how that supports things. And when we have a really healthy soil web, and this is what regenerative agriculture really promotes, and in that film it talked about a thin layer of compost will create what's called a feedback. And the reason that happens is the mycelium spreads out into a web. It develops these relationships with all these different trees and other mycelium, and they can basically feed the plant what it needs from across the room. It can transfer energy back and forth. And so that's what's been interrupted through deep tilling. And when we talk about, like, here, we are under the legacy of really bad agriculture. 100 years of sugarcane and pineapple. These guys till 10, 15 feet in some cases, which is far below where any plants would even go anyway. So they've ripped out the organic matter in the ground, and then it leaves it bare into the sky. And if you look at what's going on in the Central Valley, and you look at the amount of dust in the sky every day, that's a classic example of what bad management looks like. Trying to open up too many fields at one time, not really taking into account that, like, for an instance, during COVID, on an eighth of an acre of land, we grew almost 400,000 pounds of food without a single drop of fertilizer in a course of, I think, 2 years. Why are we growing these large monocrops and putting tons of fertilizer into them and displacing so many things and thinking that we need so much land for this number of food? You know what I mean? So, like, trying to, if we grow the soil, we're going to grow amazing, healthy food that way. And I don't want to take the whole show here because I have some really amazing people. Dwayne?
I had an opportunity to work at Haleakala National Park for a little while. And before that, I had worked in Wailea, McKenna, Kapalua, worked at all these really wealthy homes, seeing how we do their type of agriculture. And then I got to spend some time in some pristine forest. And in that time in pristine forest, I never saw anybody fertilizing. You go to National Park, go walk around. You ever see anybody with a fertilizer bag? You never see that. So when I came down after working up there in the mountain, and I'm down in the little world of Kaanapali, I'm going, why do we have to fertilize here if we don't have to there? What is broken? What's the disconnect? Why does that work and why does this not? And then we realized that over years and years of us just depleting the soil, compacting it, putting bad stuff on it, fertilizer. That's one of the worst things you can actually do is put fertilizer on the ground. After doing that as a regular thing, we've destroyed our soil substrate. You can literally take a shovel and dig a piece of dirt out of the ground. I say dirt because it's not soil, it's dirt. It comes right out as a block and it's inert. And then if you pull a soil sample, there's nothing alive in it. There's not any microbes, there's no protozoas, there's not mycelium, there's no bacteria. And you're going, wow, we have really destroyed this soil substrate. You go into the national park and dig a hole, all that fluffs up, and you pull mycelium out, and you can see it. It's all right in front of you. It's gorgeous substrate. But you go down into these areas, nothing. And the testing that we've done a lot of testing. 2% fungus to 98% bacteria. That is broken. National parks about 50-50. A working system functions with half fungus, half bacteria balance. When we're in the areas of McKenna, Wailea, all the areas in which we live, even Kahului, Wailuku, in our own yards, we've destroyed, like my yard's a lot better because I don't do anything to my yard. I let it just do its thing. Let things break down, let things become composted on their own, and then the mycelium starts to build up. It's amazing how these things work. We've done a lot of compost tea applications to golf courses, municipal parks for the county, and private homes. What they have found is, just to Eddy's point, as we add in this mycelium, they'll have a brown spot that they've had there for 10 years, and they can't figure out why is that always brown. They just can't get it to get green in that turf. But a year after we put mycelium, it's green. And they're like, wait a minute, how did you do that? We didn't do it. The fungus did. That spot was saying, hey, I'm lacking water. I'm lacking nutrient. And over here, they had too much water and ample nutrient. And they go, you got it. Sent it right through mycelial fur right to that spot and fed it. That's been scientifically proven. They dropped radioisotopes inside of fungus and watched it move throughout the forest. Right? With Geiger meters, you can watch it move through fungal mycelium. For every footprint you take, there's 300 miles of mycelium under your foot. It's incredible. 300 miles per footprint. Okay? Now that's in an intact forest. And then all of a sudden you go, wow, I'm standing in Lahaina, and there's 2% fungus. Okay, that's like a quarter mile. That needs to be like 300 miles. There's a quarter mile. It's not enough. That's why things are broken. That's why things don't function. And so in these methodologies of doing worms and vermiculture and doing composting and adding biochars, the biochar, if you didn't know, a 1 inch by 1 inch cube of biochar has more surface area than a tennis court. Okay, go play pickleball, and then imagine standing on a little tiny 1 inch by 1 inch square. Okay, that's what you're doing. Okay, that's biochar. It has enough little apartment complexes for protozoas by the trillions to live in that thing. And not only that, it locks water into it and feeds those things. It supports the whole system. And then you go, wait a minute, did they dig that stuff up in the Amazon that's 7,000 years old? Yes, they did. They sure did. They had biochar in the Amazon, making a super high acidic rainforest into a fruit forest, okay, just by adding biochar and building this beautiful soil substrate over time, okay? That's what we've got to get back into, is how do we create a space that works and functions like our national park, right? And what I have found, the best thing that I can do is leave it alone. Leave it alone. Leave it alone for 5 years. Things start growing back naturally. Then you can start feeding those things that are back in it. Start feeding your fungal colonies, start feeding your bacterial colonies, and watch those things thrive. And watch the amount of material actually thrive to the point to where it won't get a whitefly ever. And if it does, it's more than likely going to be attacked by the predator whitefly, the little wasp that will eat that whitefly. I'm a certified organic land manager, and I've converted 5 resorts into organic, including the Four Seasons Lanai. They're 100% organic over there. They can do that. They have daddy warbucks over there. They can pay for all that. And it's amazing. It's a little harder for us over here. But over there, they were able to do it. And they have the predator of the whitefly living on property. They do. They have wildlife corridors they've built. They have pollinator corridors they've built. They've put out areas and bird feeders to keep the birds away from inside. And then they have beetle promotion little houses. They have beetle housing, all built for all the beneficial beetles to live all around there to actually do the business they need to do as predation, so they don't have to add chemistry. They let the bugs do the work. So now Manele is incredibly beautiful. It's incredible, and it works with no chemistry. And so when you're sitting there and you look out and you see the coconut rhinoceros beetle eating tree, and you're going, oh man, that's not good, because that's not good. And we just got off a conversation with people from Oahu that are saying that they're kind of giving up on some of the wild areas of Oahu because of the coconut rhinoceros beetle. They can't control it. And we don't want it here. I just put my first trap up at the Royal Lahaina, just in case. And my guys, did you catch one yet? I go, I hope not. And we go look, and thank God it's not in there yet. You know, but we found them. Launiapoko, they have been found. I MISC didn't know, but I talked to landscapers that said they killed 6 of them. In Launiapoko. They've been found in Kihei, Lipoa. They've been found in Waihe'e at the golf course. They're all over this island already. That's frightening. Those things will destroy everything. And that's what's really, that's the next thing that's making me the most scared, because they're going to eat lauhala and kalo, and they're going to eat bananas. They eat all of it. You know, and from what the lady said over on Oahu, a lot of the trees, you'll go out into an area and the coconuts don't even have crowns anymore. They're all gone. It's just a pole. They've eaten them. The whole top of the coconuts are gone. So those are things we have to worry about, you know. And so the invasive species onslaught's a really big deal. Now we at Tree Recovery plan on bringing trees in possibly, but we're very trepidatious about that. We want to make sure that they are phytosanitarily looked at and they are ag inspected. And anything we bring in here is, I'm to the point of like I don't even want to bring anything in. I'm nervous about things coming in. We have such a fragile ecosystem already. And then to bring stuff in and ruin that is not something we want to get into. So we actually went to Lanai and looked at their quarantine facilities and how they're doing it over there, because they have 2 beautiful quarantine facilities built. So we saw how they were constructed. That individual lives here. We're going to work on trying to get a parcel from Mahipono to build a quarantine facility that we can actually help the Department of Agriculture with. Quarantine facilities can be run and managed by nonprofits or state facilities, right, state entities. So not by a for-profit company. So we're a nonprofit and we can run a quarantine facility. So we're going to attempt to build one. We need one. We really need one for this place. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do, none of which is going to be supported by FEMA and this disaster because we never had one we never lost one, right? They only replaced what we lost, okay? One good thing is we lost a lot of soil. We had a lot of soil damage. There are processes in which we're trying to get soil remediation dealt with, and that's going to be through biochar and applications of inoculated wood chips and compost. That's how you extract heavy metals and stuff out of the soil. And you use designer biochar, which means you limit the amount of oxygen and you burn it at a different rate, and you can vary it, and you can pull lead, or you can pull arsenic, or you can pull certain things off because it's magnetic attraction. It attracts those things underground like a magnet and sucks them right in. Yeah, because even with plants, all nutrient exchange is a magnetic exchange of a nutrient. It's a magnetic exchange. It doesn't need water. I mean, how many people have stood underneath a ulu tree with fruit on it and looked down and kicked the dirt and it's dust? I've done that before. These trees don't need water necessarily to make food. They need available nutrients, which that's where regenerative comes in. If we have the nutrients available, they can handle drought. They can still produce fruit during drought. They don't need water. Water is a catalyst as a necessary thing to move, but it doesn't necessarily need it all the time to produce fruit or actually survive. And that's why a lot of trees are considered drought tolerant. If they have intact root systems, they can be extremely drought tolerant as long as they have an available nutrient source. And that's where regenerative agriculture comes in, to give that regenerative or give that nutrient source on a constant, sustainable basis. And that's rebuilding your soil food web.
On that concept, if we can be really intimidated by if we look at something and we think, look, this is going to take 5 years. I don't have 5 years. I'm not going to be able to do that. It makes people feel hopeless. And what we've shown people is within 2 to 3 months, we have papayas that are this big with 60 pounds of papayas on them already, 4 months. That we have the knowledge now through being able to speed that up. And we've taken parcels that we thought would take us 10 or 15 years, way back 30 years ago, and we realized 2 years later, we're like, wow, this is amazing. So having the savvy to use strategic planting, certain plants, legumes, going through areas and throwing dry beans, taking plants that already have the bacteria present for nitrogen fixation, as well as bringing in earthworms, bringing in copepods, amphipods, roly-polies, setting the stage for it to happen a little faster. So in a perfect situation, if you just leave something. Yeah, and not planting plants that are specifically for composting. Like that's what I talk about strategically. So if I make a big mound and I only have so much invasive trees I cut down and chip to make this mound, then how's that mound going to sustain itself in the future? Well, what I plant there will sustain that mound. The trees that drop leaves, the trees that drop fruits, some of the grasses that have a 20-foot deep root system that are able to mine minerals from deep down in the soil and then cut it and drop, chop and drop, chop and drop. And that's kind of a mentality that you get used to when you're thinking about regenerative agriculture. So rather than raking up the leaves in your yard and taking them to the dump, I always thought that's why they call it green waste, because you're wasting all the green. Because that's where the green comes from. The green comes from nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus. And the things that the trees have pulled out of the ground, cycled into their leaves, and dropped them for the next run. And instead of us really paying attention and being observant about it, knowing if there's a coconut rhinoceros beetle or if there's ants in your tree, what we really have to do is we have to change our lifestyles. So on one side, it's intimidating. It may take 5 years to bring this total change. But if you want to change it in 6 months, or you really want to fast track it, then what you really have to change is your whole lifestyle. You have to be more present. You have to, when you're watering, look down at every single thing you're watering, not on your cell phone, looking to the side doing it. Being present, I think, is one of the most important parts of regenerative agriculture. There's not one size fits all. There's not one way to do it. Some guys will make hugelculture mounds. Some guys will do hot thermophilic compost and then spread it everywhere and then cover it with mulch, which is great. There's so many different facets to it that can be done. So what we want to look at next, I'm going to play another short film here about regenerative agriculture and one of the projects we've done. We tend to clean up places that have been left with trash everywhere. and we try to make a statement with that, but then regenerate those places, clean them up and plant them with good plants, and try to put things in order that will stop erosion, stop silt from running into the ocean, and sort of set that stage for the future. So we're going to play another short film here. It's called The Future of Regenerative Agriculture, and then we'll chat about that for a second and listen to what these guys are doing with regenerative agriculture on their homesteads.
Here we are on the north shore of Maui at Maliko Gulch. You may know it as the epicenter of the downwinder. Many an athlete has made his name here. But what you don't know is there's a rich history behind this valley that sits inside of the gulch. Unfortunately, for the last 100 years, it's been used as a dump. But we now have the opportunity to clean it up, to regenerate it, to prove to others, perhaps with some of the models we put forward, that regenerative agriculture is the way to go. That we can move towards the future, regenerate the land, and make it able to serve its environment, the ecosystem, the community, and the culture that exists around it. So if there's one thing that I have learned when it comes to wanting to clean something up, this is about doing the right thing and taking care of our environment. The only way to handle it is to set forward with examples of how to do it the right way, a way that works, a way that serves us, serves the community, serves the environment. And if we can move forward with partnerships with other farmers, then we all realize that the rising tide floats all the boats. The idea of us all being able to work together, that's what it's about. It's about building community. It's about seeing other farmers around you that are adjacent to you and perhaps letting your knowledge rub off on each other. That's the way it's been for centuries. So we support anybody that wants to be farming. We're friends with people. You don't have to put someone on the chopping block and make them the villain when their intention is to do something good. So how do we move forward with example and clean this valley and show others what we can do with everyone coming together with good intention and hard work and the goal and the intention of regenerating. So why are we here and what are we doing? We're here to make it bloom. We're here to help it live up to its name. And we're to show that with a little bit of dedication and time and good intention, that we can clean it up and we can regenerate it where it can serve the ecosystem and it can serve the community around it once again.
And I'm trying to make my approach, I'm probably fairly pessimistic just like you are, but I'm trying to rely on solutions rather than pointing out the doom and the gloom so much, which is obviously pointed out everywhere around us. But that idea of trying to focus on some solution.
And that's why I've gotten into agriculture with our Patagonia provisions, and also, you know, we're doing a bunch with breadfruit.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and yeah, we're coming out with a breadfruit cracker and working on a breadfruit tortilla.
I wrote a cookbook, 100 Ways to Make Ulu.
My CEO is doing a lot of work with trying to establish a regenerative organic certification deal. But if we could get that established, it'll change agriculture. And we'll grow more food, we'll stop destroying, in fact, we'll grow topsoil, and we'll capture carbon.
I think that's awesome. That was spurred out of me arguing with Mahipono. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that publicly or not, but what we do not need to see is dust in the sky everywhere. Lemons that are just going to cause more fruit fly outbreak, and bad pesticides used constantly. Most of that stuff is managed with herbicide. It's right under everybody's nose and no one's looking at it. And that's not regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture means to take care of the land. It means diversity. It means rebuilding the soil. And for me, what I really want to put the focus on that is what is the most important to me and dear to my heart is the Hawaiians, Kanaka Maoli, and the homesteaders. And the folks that's what's meant for here. These lands are meant for homesteading and for taking care of it. And what your kuleana is to take care of this land. So I wanted to bring that regenerative film on just to kind of show what's happening with that. And to me, the future of regenerative agriculture is right here. It's in the homesteaders here. It's in the people that are gonna be here for generations to come, that are gonna hand it to their great-grandchildren, and that are not in it for the dollar bill. That it's not a economical equation where we're gonna put in $52 million of black plastic on the ground, and we're gonna put in another $5 million of lemon trees, and then we're gonna use $2 million a year worth of chemical fertilizer and pesticide, and say somehow we are helping on this island. Just not happening. What you see down there in Maliko, we spent 4 years cleaning up a mess of a company that came over, and it was their responsibility to clean it, and they didn't touch it. And right now, it's got a contaminated well down there. And to me, if you inherit through money or whatever, steal it, whatever, however you acquire the land, you have the responsibility to take care of it. Not only for the land, but for us, the neighbors, what seeps into our water table. If there's contaminated wells on this island, they need to be cleaned. If there's areas where there's old broken cars sitting in the bushes and fertilizer from 50 years ago, it needs to be cleaned. It cannot be ignored anymore. And this is what regeneration means. Regeneration means cleaning up our mess, looking past what the mistakes our forefathers and mothers made, so that we can move into the future with something clean that we can hand to our great-grandchildren. And so to me, the future of regenerative agriculture is in front of me. My wife, the homesteaders, you guys, everyone here. So why don't you put that out there?
Well, I just wanted to point in, because there is Hawaiian homestead land, but anyone can be a homesteader. It's really like any family, any individual who wants to actually take care of the land that they're on and be self-sufficient, provide for themselves, be a part of their community, and think for the future. It's not just these guys, which we want them to be doing it, but if in your heart that this is a calling for you, you say yes to it.
Yeah. I'm going to hand it over to Kau'i over here to talk about how he uses his homestead with his family.
Well, mahalo, my brother. Thank you for having me today. I don't have any degrees like these guys who have all that legal jargon. I'm just a homesteader. But I was invited to come tonight, and I think the question was posed, what does it look like, what does sustainability look like here in the homestead? So it's these guys. This is what it looks like to me. These are my mo'os, my grandsons, and this is in the back of our yard at home. This kalo, we harvested from our home, from our gardens over there. And it's basically like what they've been explaining all night over here, the type of agriculture that we use. I didn't know that there was a name for it, right? So this is what we did. The lepo on the ground you see, all the brown waste, this is what we do. We put it back into our soil. And we find that it's the best compost or the best way to grow our kalo. So before we even planted this kalo, these boxes were actually full of cabbages, bok choy, string beans, tomatoes, bell peppers, eggplants. I mean, we had everything. And then at the next, so all this right here is sustainability to us. Teaching our mo'os, teaching our kids, the future generations that, you can do this. You can feed the family. You can feed your community. And I think for us, for one of the best gifts that we have and we receive is the ability to actually share and feed your community. We take all our kalo, our food that we grow, and we share it with our neighbors within our community. And that is the best feeling. And then we go harvest, of course, some of the access deers that we have on our islands. The baga is ono. And then we raise rabbits. So the rabbits was a way to kind of get away from the chickens and all that noise that they make within the neighborhood, that nuisance and all that. But it's a better protein by far to raise rabbits. They're quiet, you feed them, you grow your kalo like this, you grow all your plants, and you feed them what you got in your yard already. You don't have to go out and buy too much feed for them. They kind of take care of itself. And then when it's time to harvest, within 4 months, I take my kids, my grandkids, and I show them how to do it, and they're like, I think they're going to be pros in about a year or two. All the mangoes, lily kois, I mean, that's our rabbit pens in the back there. We had like 40 heads of rabbits at one time. My wife with her, she loves her kombucha over there. Now my keki's taking out all the dead banana right now, and then we use it to compost again. or we'll put our plants in it, tea leaf, whatnot, yeah. And I think that's the most I'm proud of my grandkids right now. At least we have something to pass on to the next generation that, you know, we can sustain ourselves if we really wanted to. And like they said, you know, you gotta wanna do this. It's not by far easy, but I tell you what, it is rewarding to receive all that gifts at the end, yeah? To feed your family and your community. But mahalo for having me, my brother.
No, I'm sure there'd be a little bit more to say after this and stuff as well, too. Yeah, so that's what we need to see. We need to see more of that. We need to see how each individual family uses their land. And just a little quick statistic, in I think less than 80 years ago, 90% of individuals were farmers. In less than 80, 90 years, less than 2% of individuals are farmers now. Isn't that crazy? That's all been taken over by the industry. And we've allowed them to feed us. We've allowed them to feed us for the last 80 years. You know what they've been using to feed us with? Bomb material, ammonium nitrate. Literally, the wars that had gone by, there was, I forget what the numbers are, the amount of ammonium nitrate that was left over from World War I and World War II was sold back to chemical fertilizer companies. And like, we've been literally eating food grown with bomb material for the last 80 years. And then like we look at, so just a quick thing, we're gonna get to Enomoto's thing as well here, but I just wanna point something out that it's not always so obvious. What's organic? Why isn't organic good enough? Why isn't conventional good enough? All these things have, you can grow food with bomb material. You can actually grow decent food with it. Not the most nutritious food in the world, but it'll sustain you. But what you cannot grow with that is soil. You basically deplete all the life in the soil, and the soil becomes inert. And so then they start pushing organic farming, which great, that's a step in the right direction. But what they started to do was basically mimic chemical farming with organic fertilizer. So they'll take chickens from a Tyson chicken factory full of hormones and everything else, grind it up and say that's organic fertilizer. But wait a second, you fed it everything that was terrible, and what you put in is what you get out. So the idea of regenerative farming is really to look to the source. What are you putting in to what you're getting out? What does that circle look like? And what does that circle look like years down the road as a circle has been perpetuating itself? That's a forest. And that's how we build these systems this way. So the idea of reforesting our planet, sequestering more carbon, feeding more people, taking pride in what you grow, there's so many things that come along with that, and there's so many ways that we really want to motivate our local community to start farming. It's on everybody's lips, farming, farm, let's do it. But people have this barrier, it's like, how do I get started? So we're going to talk about that a little bit later, and I'm going to tell you how with Regenerative Education Centers and with Living Earth Systems, we offer leases to people. We offer the knowledge for free. We're not trying to get anything. We're trying to like perpetuate people starting to get back to the land and starting to farm. And we're not the only ones doing it. There's a lot of folks doing it out there. So I'm going to get into what Keikoa has got going on right now.
Aloha.
And we'll do Keikoa's slideshow. Yeah.
So I think what I want to communicate are three things. I want to tell you folks about the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act program, homesteading program. I want to tell you about the nonprofit Pa'upena Community Development, Inc., and the second nonprofit that I'm a member of, Na Kia'io Maui. So the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act was started in 1920. It's a federal law that was spearheaded by Prince Jonah Kuhio Kalanianaole. And March is when we celebrate his birthday. So on the 30th of this month will be the Prince Kuhio Ho'olaulea at Paukukalo Homestead, which was the very first Native Hawaiian homestead on Maui. I believe it was formed in 1960. And so under this federal program that Prince Kuhio started, those of us who are 50% blood quantum Native Hawaiian are entitled to homestead land. And the federal act set aside 203,000 acres of land in the archipelago for us to homestead. On Maui, we have 31,000 acres of that land. And Kau'i and I are so blessed to be homesteaders. There are 1,425 homesteaders on Maui. There are 9,000 on the wait list to get homesteads on Maui. So we're among the blessed people, the 10% of that wait list on Maui who have homestead. And when we talk about regenerative farming, the word I use for regenerate is repatriate. And so I think of my nonprofit as not so much trying to regenerate the soil, but trying to regenerate my people on the land. Prince Kuhio stated in his testimony before Congress in 1920 when he was pushing this legislation through, is that the Native Hawaiian culture is based on agriculture and fishing. And we are trying to bring our people back to the land. They've been disconnected to the land, and we want to reconnect them to the land, regenerate our people on the land, repatriate our culture, and repatriate our lands. I mean, the Hawaiian Homes Commission and the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, which manages this federal trust, has 28,000 people on the wait list. And so a few of us are on the land, and 28,000 of us who are 50% blood quantum are waiting to get on the land. So, so I'm not so much a regenerator of soil as a regenerator of my people on the land, yeah. And so 7 years ago, I co-founded this nonprofit, Pa'upena Community Development, Inc., and there I am with my co-founder, Norman Abihai. We both live at Waiahuli Hawaiian Homestead. And this is my board. I have 8 people on my board, including the lower middle person, Kaia Medeiros, a brilliant young man in his early 30s. He is the agricultural advocate for the Department of Agriculture, the County of Maui. Our county is the only county that has a Department of Agriculture, and he is the ag advocate, and he is a new member of our board. Okay, so the vision is to reconnect us to Waiahuli Ahupua'a in thriving farming and ranching communities, and to share this paradigm throughout the Pai'aina, which means archipelago. And our mission is to provide resources, training, and advocacy for fellow Hawaiian Homes Trust beneficiaries to build homes and self-sufficient communities. And then we have our values there, ea, sovereignty, and so forth. Education, e huliao, change the system, transform the community. Eleo, energetic. These pictures are just highlights. These are actually the captions of what's happening. And these are pictures of me in the state of Washington. And we have Kaui's family is from Edmonds, yeah? And I was, this is Federal Way. I just got groups of homes of waitlisters. These are people who, because of economics, they can't make it on Maui. They have to go to Washington to get jobs. And we want to bring them back, of course. So I had meetings up there with the beneficiaries. On the top right, that is the new director of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, Cully Watson. He's a lawyer and a developer. And these are other pictures. Let's see. The two on the right are at the legislature when Cully was confirmed by the Senate. And then on the top left, we're meeting with Congresswoman Jill Tokuda about agriculture. The two people on the far left in that top left photo, Kali Arce is the head, she's a Molokai native. She's the head of the County of Maui Department of Agriculture, and next to her is her deputy, Koa Heveheva. Okay, and then the bottom picture shows a group of us beneficiaries. We're learning how to write grants. And in the sort of the center lady is, her name is Luana Mahi. She's my neighbor at Waiahuli, and she is the head, Mayor Bisson named her the head of the Department of the Office of Economic Development, yeah. So she's teaching us how to write grants. Yeah, other pictures of us on the homestead. And I think, is that bottom left picture us guys? Yes, this is us at Olowalu.
Oh, yeah.
Eddy Garcia is giving us a regenerative farm tour.
Nice.
Yes, I set that farm tour up, and I set up 2 farm tours, and we had a lot of people, dozens of people, yeah, right? Yes, that's where they have 6.9 acres in Olowalu. They just moved on to it a month ago, is my understanding, right?
Yes.
And they're going to homestead. They're homesteading their own land, rock and roll, right? Yes. Okay, so moving forward, I'm not going to read that. What I'm going to tell you is, you can read it if you want to, is that the Hawaiian Homes Commission met this week on Maui. They meet every month on a different island, and they met in Lahaina. And so Monday they approved a license, a 10-year license for my nonprofit to access 127 acres. And on that acreage, we're going to be teaching our beneficiaries how to farm and ranch, how to raise livestock, how to raise crops. And the interesting thing was when the archaeological survey was done of this 127-acre tract, 102 acres were determined to be a cultural preserve. The archaeological survey said there are over 100 archaeological sites and features on this land. It has to be set aside. You folks cannot farm it. So we're going to be farming 25 acres, and 102 acres of that, my board has committed to do what is called adaptive reuse. Those ancient agricultural terraces and livestock pens, we are going to use them. We're going to grow kalo, uala, ava in those terraces. That's what we've committed to do. That's what the SHPD, the state, what is it? Hawaiian Preservation Division. They said that we can't use that land to farm. We have to take care of. We have to preserve those archaeological features, and we're happy to do that. I mean, the board voted unanimously to take those treasures that have been left to us by our kupuna, and we're going to regenerate them, repatriate them. Let me see, do I have anything else on here? Yeah, so that's 120. Wait. So this is a picture of us. We did very recently, we met out there because we're trying to get a water meter from the county of Maui. Just yesterday, I wrote a memo to John Stuffelbein. He is the director of the Department of Water Supply. And you know, the department submitted the request a month ago. I think it went to the bottom of the pile because we've sent him 3 more emails and he hasn't talked to us. His department hasn't talked to us. But you know, under the state water code, the top 2 people who have priority under the state water code are farmers and Native Hawaiian beneficiaries of this trust. But we are only now trying to exert our water rights. And so we're trying to get a water meter for this land. And you know, that East Maui Water Authority that you folks just voted in, yes, that is going to be, those waters over there, we've determined that we are entitled to 11.8 million gallons for the 5,000 acres that is in upcountry Maui homelands. But it remains to be seen if those water rights are going to be implemented, executed by the County of Maui and by the State of Maui. So those are some of the issues that we face as Native Hawaiians on Maui and in the state. And I'm happy to share that information with you because honestly, when Prince Kuhio made this federal law 103 years ago, the state of Hawaii became a state because the federal government said, if the territory will manage this federal trust, we will make you a state. And people don't realize we became a state because of this Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. And the state has been very obstructive, I feel, in putting our people back on the land. And that's what Pa'upena is fighting for, to get our people on the land. We're the first people of this land. And we became a state because of this Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, federal trust. So yeah, that's my story.
On that note, I just want to point something out. With that, the atrocity that the homesteaders should have to ask for water. Vai, ho'ovai, pu'uvai, everything that the culture is built around. But yet, Mahipono owns half of EMI. Do people know that? I don't think people actually realize that. And they're dumping water down Maliko, basically water banking. They're letting millions and millions of gallons go every day into the ocean, and then they're drying it up and killing all of our native species by the billions. Not by the millions, but by the billions when they do it again. They run it for 3 months. They take the water where they need it. They're opening another field. And then what they're trying to do is claim the allotted amount of water that they're using, but they're not actually using it. That's known as water banking. And we've proven that through the last 4 years we've been down there. We've been filming it, and we've been documenting it. And this next year, we're going to be working on a documentary, releasing it about what's happening in Maliko. And Maliko, the name, means to bloom. And it's been and again, this is an atrocity to me, because if you go down to the Hawaiian dictionary and you look up Maliko, it says it means to discard, because it was used 100 years as a dump, that people forgot its name. And so when we talk about Maliko making it live up to its name again, meaning to make it bloom, it was known as the bloom because it runs in a north-south fashion, so the sun only goes over it for a very small time. So all the plants that are photosensitive bloom 2-3 times a year, like tea leaf and whatnot. So that's why it was known as to bloom, rather than to discard or be used as a dump. So with that, sorry, that's just a note that hearing of that and hearing how the Hawaiians are still fighting for water, which is like an adherent right, but yet others can come in and grow millions and millions of lemon trees as a hedge fund from Canada. And like another thing that's never really talked about too much is here on Maui, and this is really a weird, sensitive topic, but I'm going to just bring it up real quick because I think it'll enlighten everybody to a little bit. Our agricultural setup, 76% of our lands are agriculture. If you go to Oahu, 26% of their lands are agriculture. That still leaves enough room for the giant companies to farm. We don't need 76% of our land in agriculture. All of that land that's in agriculture that Mahipono will probably use and develop later on, there should be different ways. There should be rezoning, and we should really covet our awesome agricultural land that we can really take care of, that we can grow lo'is, that we can have the Hawaiians grow all of the voyaging plants and everything that's so important, rather than see this like really bizarre setup where it's 76% agricultural lands and the rest is between 24%, which is, and I may have those numbers slightly skewed, but it's real close to that. So it really sets we don't want to see people on these ag lands developing more gentleman's estates. And what a gentleman estate is, it's ag land. I'm going to buy 7 acres, even though my home's going to be 3,000 square feet. I'm going to have 20 lemon trees in my yard, just like Mahipono, and I'm only going to pay agricultural taxes, which means I'm not going to put that money back into my community. And yet, when the agricultural land is all gone for us farmers, even though 76% of our land is agriculture, nobody can find a lease to farm on. No one can find land to farm on. So it seems really bizarre and twisted to me. So we have to start, excuse me, yeah.
What you're describing is an atrocity. And there's a small elite group that are benefiting from. Who's cutting the deal?
I wish I knew. I'm a farmer, I'm a surfer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm simple in a lot of ways. I can point out the obvious, but I think as communities, we need to come together
Yeah.
and we need to hold people accountable
Right.
for it. I've been telling those guys for years, they knew I was cleaning the valley at
Mm-hmm.
Mahi Pono, and they would not even allow me to have a lease on the land,
Right.
even though I was pointing out to them, look, the river's got batteries in it, it's poisoned, you need to
Yes.
clean this up,
Right.
this is your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Just wipe it under the table, we only want someone quiet in there. So they they don't want it to be seen in public. They're like the last time I posted something about them, this is probably gonna stir a lot of things up. They panicked. Kelly Slater made it go viral, and
Right.
they attacked me. They attacked anybody who had it out there. And that second video I made where I said nobody's the enemy and we don't have to put them on the chopping block was me trying to give them the chance to do the right thing. And they definitely did not do the right thing, and they're not gonna. So we're gonna tell this story pretty soon, and I think a lot of people will be really interested to see. We put dye in the ditches, and we traced the water from some of the streams back down to Maliko. We did a lot of things that are going to show real obvious truths
Got
into
it.
what's happening with how they are taking our water from 8 to 13 different streams. There's no fail-safes in place to stop our native species from going in there. All of our oopu, our hi'ivai, our prawns and all the other things, everything that lives in the river has to go through what's called a post-larval stage. All of our creatures here in freshwater, they have to go down to the ocean, soak in brackish water in their larval stage, and then they swim back up the river. So when you take all this water from these rivers, it never reaches the land, the ocean. You put it into a ditch and you put it into another river, and then you push it out to the sea there. Maliko is a dry gulch. It's not a wet gulch. What they've done is by having that water in there for the last 100 years, they've actually changed the ecosystems around it. And every time they dry it up, all these native species die by the millions on every single dry up. So we've been like keeping track of that, putting some numbers down, bringing the biologists in, showing them what's happening, and maybe trying to bring some attention to just how important our water is. Our water should not be in private people's hands. They should not have the right to manage our water. And that comes down to Lahaina burning and the water that's being mismanaged and taken in Lahaina and in private developers' hands rather than in the people's hands, and trying to serve the river should, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic slightly. So the water should be in the rivers. And yes, it needs to be here to serve us, but it definitely should not be on golf courses and hotels at the rate it is and in the hands of private developers that are creating these estates and these gentlemen's estates, and then they have the audacity to call it agriculture. It's not agriculture, it's something else. So like for us to walk forward with regenerative agriculture, and that whole term regenerative, it's far bigger than agriculture. And that's what I want to bring up. We're going to show a couple little films here in just a minute, not quite yet. But what I want to put into perspective of, as a nonprofit that I started, myself and my wife, we started this together. It was the idea that too many nonprofits take administrative fees. They take big salaries. Nothing actually goes to the people in so many cases. So we decided to do a nonprofit where we don't take administrative fees. We cover it all, so that 100% or 98% or whatever it is can go straight to the things that we want to promote. And right now we're in the role of disaster recovery. We are still farming, but we're also housing people, and we're trying to turn people on to what homesteading looks like. Can you live in a 40-foot container with a nice deck and a solar system and your kids running around eating carrots and kalo? It's awesome, and people are waking up to it and going, wow, I can do that. And so like that's the role we're into. But if you see that film, it talks about 200,000 coffee cups a day. It talks about like us not managing ourselves. What are we putting in our washing machine and straight into the water table? What are we putting on our bodies? What are we supporting in agriculture? What are we buying and allowing those guys to perpetuate what they do? So the idea of regenerative education centers is lifestyle. It's life-changing perception that if we can actually see that all these differences, there's regenerative business. There's ways to run your business where you don't have to be on the top and everybody's below you. Everybody's equals. Everybody makes something out of it. A farm should be the same way. The way we treat the land, all the animals and everything should be equal in a sense, and they all have their part to play. So I just wanted to point that out through what Regenerative Education Centers is about. I know this was to focus on our nonprofit. So we're going to play these other little films. That stretches into, as a surfer, I had worms, beetle larvae that actually eat styrofoam. It was one of the codes that I cracked sort of by accident. Yvonne Chenard broke his arm with me on Molokai 20, 30 years ago. The boards they brought were the first EPS boards that were made. Told us we couldn't break them. We broke them in 2 days in 10-foot shore break. They wound up staying with us on Molokai. And years later, I found some larvae in some actual oatmeal. And they were eating the oatmeal. And I was like, wow, these guys, I can take them home and compost with them like worms. Let's see what they are. And they ate through the styrofoam container. On the styrofoam container, it said EPS. So I was like, whoa, those words, didn't he say EPS? Oh, yeah. So I threw them in a container together and forgot about them. Months later, I went back. The boards were gone. All that was left was an empty shell. So that started this journey of like, wow, our surfboards are sort of like a dirty little secret. You know, there's a lot of nasty chemicals in there, but yet we should be ambassadors. We surf all over the planet. We see the most beautiful spots. We should be able to like have that responsibility of saying, hey, let's do something else. So that turns on to, well, we did a short stint in California where we wanted to show where the voyaging plants could actually grow in California. So we took taro, we took tea leaf, all sorts of different things there, along with vetiver grass and a lot of things we grow with regenerative agriculture. And we did a 1.5-year stint there, and we broke records with it. A squash plant produced 1,800 pounds of squash from one butternut squash. We grew taro, we grew sugarcane, we grew all these different things there with this concept of regenerating the soil. Their soil there is millions of years old, way older than ours is. And they have this thing called decomposed granite. The only thing missing from it is organic material. So it was really simple. Just mulch it, put some earthworms in it, and we felt like superheroes. No fruit fly. Everyone thinks, oh, you go to Hawaii, it's easy to grow things there. If you farm, you know what we're up against. Japanese beetle, fruit fly. We have every bug that's all over the world right here, and all the time. There's no winter to knock it back. So it was like over there, it was so easy to farm compared to what we're up against here. So doing that stint and trying to prove a concept in a different place, once we realized that we had this, so the worms, everybody wanted to do it and just throw surfboards in with it and then just put it in their garden. And I was like, no, that you can't do that. It's actually more complicated than that. We float it, we feed it to mycelium, we feed it to other earthworms, and then we grow plants with it. And we're still watching those for years. We don't want the enthusiasm to get ahead of the facts. So I sort of stuck that into a utility patent and a nonprofit, and that kind of started and spurred out Regenerative Education Centers. And then we've been teaching people about farming and whatnot. And now we're at a different point right now where we're still farming, but the fires hit. So the first film is about making agave surfboards out of agave that we grew in California. And then we brought it over here, and then we made the surfboard with it. And we grow that same agave, or very similar to it, on the hills everywhere. It's very invasive. So trying to take that and use that as a resource is just one more concept of that. So we're going to play these little films here about that right now. Yeah, it was wild harvested, excuse me, on that one. As we were growing some at the time, but that was wild harvested from right next to where our project was. And it's called Farm to Foam. So let's check this one out.
I'm Jeff Timpone, and Eddy Garcia and Agave Surf were nice enough to bring me this beautiful blank. I'm going to shape a high-performance pill design out of it, so it'll be usable in a lot of different conditions and up and down any beach. Cut the last part out.
This one was specifically harvested this week out of that area by my house from this little family.
No, this is
So I think they even have some that are like more filled, you know what I mean? But they just chose to use this.
No, this is the best agave I ever shaped, and the thing is, it shapes nice. Okay, so it's all done. My son Nick is here, he's joined the party. And it shaped out really nice. I was really stoked. I mean, it's the fastest wood board I ever built. I mean, as far as just the shaping part of it. The wood itself is super nice. And
yeah, what were the similarities to foam or contrast to foam and similarities to other woods you've worked with?
you know, it's kind of on its own plane. It's not balsa, and it's definitely not willy-willy. It's got some little fibers to it, but it's super, it's consistent. It mows really nice with the planer.
That's good.
Yeah, no, the whole thing, the blank that those guys glued up was really pretty nice.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do a lot of cleaning up.
Nice. So it feels good. Came out to a really nice weight. I was really surprised, actually.
Yeah, it's
that was
light.
a concern I had.
Do you feel like it's lighter than balsa?
I'd say it's comparable. Balsa, you know, for a board this small, it's about the same. Yeah. It might be even just a smidgen lighter. It might be a smidgen lighter.
Came out really nice.
Way more sustainable. No balsa forest chopped down.
From what I understand, yeah, this is the pistil of the flower, actually, of the agave, correct?
You got it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It's very nice.
This is one of the highest carbon sequestering plants on the planet, other than bamboo for land. The only thing that can touch it is algae in the ocean, which means it has a very expansive root system that allows it to sequester carbon from the atmosphere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, super cool.
Can't wait to see how it rides.
Yeah.
No, this is my 50th year shaping boards, and I've kind of lived through it all, from Clark foam to styro epoxy to just, I mean, I've shaped just about every board and every medium, from kite, tow, you know, stand-up paddle boards. And, you know, here at Timponi's, we're trying to go in a new direction with our materials. We think that it's time the world woke up to something new. Instead of the same old thing, just mowing out the same old projects. I'm super excited to be working with this and all the sustainable epoxies and hemp and flax linens that we're using on our boards as well.
Dun-dun-dun. Yeah. So that's Jeff Timponi. If you guys aren't familiar with him, legend, amazing shaper, awesome guy. He's in Haiku at Poela Cannery there, and he runs what's called an Eco-Light program, EcoBoard, and they use a bunch of different materials and bioresins and whatnot and different stuff like that. So I think we have one last little clip that I was going to pay for here, and then we'll just open it up for questions and just general discussion anybody wants to talk about. And the next one is just a little short thing from, I think, Love the Sea, which is another nonprofit that we're working with. And we're about ready to get into something else later on and maybe even do another one of these and start to tackle some of the issues with the plastic in the ocean and some of the other things we're dealing with and keeping silt off of our reef systems. That's also another huge part of regenerative agriculture right now, is that this is a whole system, just like it was for the Kanaka, the Aupua'a, from the water to the water, you know what I mean, all the way down from the, I don't want to say the mountain from the sea to the water to the sea. I'll let you guys quote that better than me, but yeah, no. The Aupua'a, yeah, from the mountain to the sea. So to be able to think that way in everything we're doing. So yeah, we'll just play this other one from those guys, and then we can open up for any questions and whatnot.
I'm Eddy Garcia, and I'm with Living Earth Systems and Regenerative Education Centers. After the devastating fires in Lahaina, our farm burned down the road, so we decided to come over to this farm that we were already working on restoring. I know how to build solar systems and little tiny houses and whatnot and grow food, so I basically said, why don't I try to utilize this to try to help our community? I'm gonna make up to 200 of these homesteads. I'm gonna put some on my own land that I own. I'm gonna put some on land I lease. I'm gonna put some with the 50 people on my lists that wanna let people stay on their land. I also have within the nonprofit, we rolled out a food program. So we'll donate food from the for-profit farm, but we've brought in funding to farm here and hire 4 people that are displaced as farm workers now to help us really farm this whole area the way that I do it. And then every bit of food grown there will be given to people through the food truck and through boxes. I hope you come and visit and see what we're doing here and get your hands in the dirt and see what it looks like when community comes together and start to share the same values around stewardship and taking care of the land and taking care of each other.
So I met Eddy at Kipuka Olowalu. Has anybody been to Kipuka Olowalu? It's a 74-acre cultural reserve back behind the petroglyphs. We have basically from state land all the way to the ocean. We have 15 feet on either side of the river. In some portions where we are allowed to basically help the landowner decide what's to be planted along the river's edge. That just helps with the buffering of the silts and the sediments going down Olowalu Stream. It hasn't been flowing like I've been seeing it lately. I mean, the flow that we got now is pretty impressive. It makes it to the ocean right now, which is great. It's really, really great. Eddy came up and introduced himself to us. We're in the middle of a, kind of not necessarily a reforestation project. According to Hank Oppenheimer, it's more like some dude went and bought a bunch of native plants and put it in one spot. He's not wrong. He's 100% right. And the reason why is because we didn't do core samples to pull up pollen and say, hey, what exactly is in this valley, and do a complete restoration based on pollen samples, right? Well, a lot of people do that, and then you get exactly what goes back in the valley. What I did is I went and bought a bunch of species that are comparable to that location and just flooded about a half-acre space and just loaded it up. Kauai, Willy Willy, Ali'i, Sandalwoods, it's all in there. It's beautiful, actually. It's actually working out really, really nice. Amazingly, we found that the closer you plant Kauai or Koa together, the faster it grows. Sounds weird, kind of counterintuitive. Well, the first planting we did was 10 kauai. They were very spread apart. One survived. We planted 30 in a 1 foot spacing. All of them survived. Not only that, they're 3 times bigger than the ones we planted months and months before. Those are nitrogen fixers, and they actually have the ability to almost create, similar to what biochar does, little apartment complexes for microbes to live in, and then that allows nitrogen to be available for other things. What was really interesting is having groups come up. We have had numbers of groups come up there. Department of Transportation talking about the highway comes through. We had, Nature Conservancy, the watershed. We've had a number of groups come up. One cool one we actually had a chance to meet with Maui Nui Marine Resource, and they came up. They've been doing a lot of water monitoring. They have a lot of baseline tests in the ocean right along that reef, and there's very, very little nitrification happening on the Olawala Reef. And it was amazing because, as we're sitting there talking, we're going, okay, we're all sitting around surrounded by invasive legumes, all nitrogen fixers, right? And they're going, wow, I wonder why there was no nitrogen that made it out there. Well, it's because you had all these nitrogen fixing plants that had protozoas binding that nitrogen, utilizing that nitrogen, right? And not allowing it to go out into the reef. And so that was actually protecting the reef. So it's really weird when you sit there and go, well, Opiuma, Haulikoa, and Keawe saved the reef. It did. It's been protecting the reef. So it's really strange that a lot of folks are like, oh, get all those invasives out. Well, slow down. As long as we input the right things back. We would hate to take all these legumes out and not put legumes back. So we have to be able to put back the peas, and we have to be able to put back these species that do the legumes, that put back that ability to bind those nutrients to the soil. So it's really key that we do that. So as we move forward, we're going to be planting a lot more koa, or actually kauai in that location. Koa doesn't grow very well down there. A lot of Chinese and oriental rose beetles and Chinese beetles, it's terrible. They eat them really fast. So we have to be careful with that. So we're going with kauai. It's a lot tighter grain. It doesn't get affected as bad. It still gets hit, but we have to pay attention to that. But if we keep the soil strong enough, it can fight off a lot of these bugs. We keep a strong cuticle on the plant, and they can't penetrate that cuticle. So that's the thing. Also, when you deal with organics, plants at some point, they begin to break down, right? It's a natural occurrence. These plants will exude these things called exudates. And when they do that, it basically kind of changes the color of the tree in an infrared spectrum that signals to the bugs, hey, I'm starting to die. It's time for you to come over and start breaking me down. And so that's why you see an infestation of whitefly, or you see an infestation of mealybug. That's a sign that something's wrong with the soil, or the tree itself is aging out. Now, if the tree isn't aging out, then it's clearly a sign of the soil, right? And so we've got to start regenerating that soil to make sure that it is healthy enough to make that plant strong enough to survive above the soil. Humans are very, very bad about paying attention to the little things. We are very observant. We like to see it, and when we see it, we're like, oh, we see these bugs, let's spray it. No, let's not go that route. In most cases, the spray is actually detrimental to the system. Let's think about pulling a soil sample. Let's find out what's wrong with the soil, and let's feed the soil. And then watch the tree over the next few months start to be better. And like when I had said that I had let stuff go for 5 years, the reason why is because I didn't have an education on regenerative agriculture. I decided to say, okay, I'm based in conventional agriculture. I'm just going to stop what I'm doing. My father's moniker was, if you want to stop digging a hole, you put the shovel down. And it's like, oh, well, if that's the case, if I want to try to heal the land, I better put the fertilizer down.
That's right.
Don't use the fertilizer anymore. Stop. And I watched my hotel, this is the Westin Maui, we watched it turn into this really beautiful place without the knowledge of my management. They had no idea I made these changes, none whatsoever, did not hit the bottom line, no increase in using money, but the property started looking better. And then when I went to my boss and said, hey, I'm gonna get a bunch of compost, and they said, yeah, you haven't been buying fertilizer. Yeah, I'm not buying fertilizer anymore, I'm buying compost now. And I'm gonna start using compost now. And they're like, why? I go, watch. And holy crap, did it work. And then just from there, we started developing these new programs to make it up on the forefront of the resorts as a protective measure because of litigation. You got to think about this, exposure, right? If you have employees and they get cancer from the chemicals you're forcing them to use, you're liable. I know Dwayne Lee Johnson. He's dying of Roundup exposure.
We got to do a few questions.
Gotcha.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I'm just going through that. I'll let you guys ask a few questions. How about that?
I know we only got super limited time here. We want to make sure. And I know there's probably a few questions out there and whatnot. So if anybody's got anything to say or add into there or any questions, go for it. There's a microphone for you.
So you've opened up a can of worms. Where do we go from here? What can we actually do in practical terms?
So,
I mean,
On which thing specifically?
well, I've learned certain new concepts and terms, and I'd like to know what are practical ways of learning how to implement them. Do you have like a school, or do you have, a way for people to have exposure to everything you're talking? Everyone has brought something to the table.
I'll answer that one because I would say so. On Saturdays we do volunteer day over at Regenerative Education Centers, Kapuka Olowalu and these guys, and Dwayne is always, I'm sure he's available to the community for some of the stuff he's teaching as well. And I think the idea of like bringing more people, we have such fragmented communities sometimes, the more we can come together and we can practice some of these things. And I've been setting models up here in farms all over the island here. So there are several different places, and you can contact us. You can find us at recenters.org, which is Regenerative Education Centers. You can also find us at livingearthsystems.com. And that's where I've been doing this for over 40 years, not under that name. But we realized half of the stuff I do because it's my way of giving back to my community. So it's nice to have a nonprofit to be able to do that so that we can give back to our community that way. Excuse me.
There's also on YouTube Living Earth Systems, and on Instagram Living Earth Systems. Lots of stuff there. And I mean, just to plug it because we're also hiring farmers right now. So if you want a full-time job as a farmer or a part-time job as a farmer,
If you want to volunteer,
DM us on Instagram.
yeah, you just want to come see what we're doing, that's how you get involved. And the best way I know how to teach people is to immerse them into it and say, hey, start showing up. We don't want to volunteer to come just one time. Make a weekend, come on the weekends. I see people in here who come every weekend. Claude cooks for everybody every weekend, an amazing French chef over there. And I see Manu who brings his family all the time on the weekends here. So showing up and getting your hands dirty. And then you can call me and ask me questions. I'm an open book to share with my community because that's what I'm here for right now, is to be able to promote. The more we can start farming, the more we can take that back is what we're trying to do. Does anyone else have any questions?
Any last questions?
Yep.
One question referring to the beginning of the presentation for sequestering carbon. Is there a way for people who live in an urban environment, like in big cities, to be part of that movement, sequestering carbon?
Every single yard should have 10 trees and vetiver grass, and we should just be looking at what we're planting around our house. Right now, we're planting terrible landscape plants that are just handed to us, and we just, oh, that guy's got that, I'll do that. And we're looking for privacy and whatnot, but if we actually take the time to seek out what plant can I grow that's better at this, what can I grow that I'm gonna eat off, which is gonna make me throw less chemicals in the ground because I'm eating off of it. I think that landscaping regeneratively is really important. Green roofs, all the things that come along with that. And I'd like to see a lot more regenerative landscape companies sprout up, like with what he's doing right over here.
Paupena.org is my first nonprofit. Nakia'iomaui.org is the disaster relief one that I'm hoping to work with you on that. And the last one is called projectmahi'ai.net. And that is a platform that sells and distributes native grown crops, meats, butter, whatever, yeah.
Beautiful. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We do these every third Thursday, but this group was very, very educational and very relevant to what's happening in our island community. So I want to give them a round of applause for educating us tonight. Mahalo nui loa. Anything you have last to say, Eddy?
I'm just glad to see you everyone here. Glad to see all these folks up here. We need to start the dialogue more. And I want to point out Akakū and what a resource they are for us. And that's not just me plugging them. Like, we're so lucky to have somewhere that we can speak to our community. We were up here a few weeks ago trying to deal with what's happening with the toxic dump site and whatnot. But like, to have this resource available and what these people do for our community, check them out, take advantage of it, try to show up for some of their things or just see what they're doing, because it's amazing and it's a resource for all of us. So we're super stoked.
So I do have my 1997, 1998 producer card from here. So yes, I used to be a producer here. Yes, awesome. And you can find us at treecoveryhawaii.org. We do have volunteer opportunities, and we're also looking for more people that want to donate space to grow trees for families. Yeah, we're going to hanai trees. So if you're down to hanai a tree for a family in Lahaina or Kula, let us know.
Can people contact you for if they have questions?
Absolutely.
So feel free to mingle. We're going to close it up now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.